Well, a CIA document has surfaced and it is sending shockwaves all over the globe because it talks about UFOs, aliens, and revenge massacre turning people to literal stone. I've got some crazy details to share with you in today's broadcast. Not only that, but Tim Walz got a big thank you from literal Satanists. I'm so glad that him and Kamala Harris did not win the presidency, by the way. But let's dive into this chilling report that I found. And this is on dailymail.co.uk. Chilling declassified CIA file reveals aliens committed revenge massacre after their UFO was shot down. It goes on to state a bone-chilling document declassified by the CIA has exposed an alleged massacre by aliens from a crashed UFO who turned an entire military unit into stone. According to the report, Soviet troops shot down a flying saucer hovering over the Soviet military unit in Siberia roughly 35 years ago, and what happened next was truly terrifying. In the document summarizing a 250-page top-secret file acquired by U.S. intelligence agents, eyewitnesses said 5 aliens climbed out of the wrecked craft, combined themselves into one creature, exploded in a burst of intense energy, and turned 23 soldiers into solid rock. It goes on, the unearthed document, declassified in 2000, was recently the topic of the AI or Evil podcast, where host Josh Hooper revealed that 2 of the soldiers at the UFO crash site actually survived the encounter. However, the 23 petrified soldiers could not be saved. Their remains and the debris from the spacecraft were reportedly moved to a secret research base near Moscow. In the report, the CIA describes the aliens as short humanoids with large heads and large black eyes, which is your typical alien gray that you hear about all the time. And in conclusion, the extraordinary tale was published also in the Ukrainian paper Holist Ukraini on March 27th, 1993, and I probably butchered that. The incident, which a Canadian newspaper believed took place between 1989 and 1990, was only uncovered by the CIA after the fall of the Soviet Union and its secret police organization, the KGB. Now, here is the actual document. And this highlighted blue part here that I had, but here's what it says there. It is stated in the testimonies by the 2 soldiers who remained alive that after freeing themselves from the debris, the aliens came close together and then merged into one single object that acquired a spherical shape. That object began to buzz and hiss sharply and then became a brilliant white. In a few seconds, the spheres grew much bigger and exploded by flaring up with an extremely bright light. At that very instant, 23 soldiers who had watched the phenomenon turned into stone poles. Only 2 soldiers who stood in the shade and were less exposed to the luminous explosion survived. Dun, dun, dun. So there's kind of the newly leaked tale, shall we say, of what's going on. But I find the story rather interesting because I'm also a Christian and I've read the Bible a few times over. But there's a story in the Bible of Lot and his wife running away from the city because the city was so corrupt and so much sin going on. And they basically take everyone, start running out of the city. And they were warned not to look back at the evil city. And Lot's wife did just that. And when she turned back, she turned to, well, a pillar of salt, which is rather interesting with this story because, you know, here we have reportedly, according to this account that came out of the Soviet Union and now in the hands of the CIA and now in the hands of the public, where they turned to literal pillars of stone. So what's interesting is there are some parallels, if you will, in the Bible. And there's lots of tales about UFOs all throughout history. And personally, I take a Christian standpoint on that, which I think has a very biblical founding. And one of my favorite researchers, if you guys want to check him out, is L.A. Marzulli. He's got some great stuff on there and has really studied this for a long time. But bottom line, I do believe that there are UFO out there. I do believe that they are fallen angels and demons and the whole nine yards, the way that the Bible really describes them, because there's whole stories from the book of Enoch, which I've also read, talking about angels being cast down from heaven, which also is in the Bible, about 200 of them. They come to the earth, and they're giants in the land, or their babies become giants. They have sex with a woman. They have giants, which they're called Nephilim in the Bible. The Nephilim are not so good. They're bringing corruption, and the fallen angels are also bringing corruption on the land. And then they send in the flood, ergo the biblical flood, to wipe out all the corruption from the fallen angels. But I believe that these fallen angels are very parallel with the demons spoken about, or the UFOs spoken about in some of these documents. So lots of stuff. And I've done pretty intense studies on this in the past. I used to do it a lot more on my channel. It's just been a while since I have. But basically, I do believe that the UFOs could be your Nephilim, your demons, your fallen angels. And they were bound, according to the book of Enoch, for, I think it's 70 times 7 years or something to the effect of, which would put their fresh release around, I believe, the early 1900s or 1850, somewhere around there, which is coincidentally around the same time that we had our technological explosion. So lots of information pertaining to that. I wonder what your take is on some of the UFOs. What do you believe about that? But either way, I think the story has some merit to it because it's not the only one of its kind. There's plenty of UFO stories out there. There's UFO people who claim to have been abducted, which would also fall in line with the Bible because they've always been after the DNA, the modification of DNA, the making of babies, how to create humankind, because they want to pretend and play God, a lot of these. And that's my opinion. And there's lots of different people like Tom Homan and not Tom Homan, but Tom Horn is another one. And they've all got different views on this a little bit, but I'd love to hear your comments on that. But either way, one other thing I wanted to show you in today's broadcast is what is going on with Tim Walz. Now, as a reminder, right, Tim Walz, this is Tim Walz, Minnesota, where they allowed a religious display to Satan in their capital. This is the religious display in the Minnesota capital that Tim Walz had allowed. Well, because he allowed that, he just got a letter or a plaque thanking him. And here's the actual plaque. This was posted by Liz Collins there on X, and it says, "The Democrat Coalition of Satan Worshippers thanks Governor Tim Walz for not standing in the way of spreading Satanism in the state capitol building. Satan has a special place for you." And I believe Satan does have a very special place for Tim Walz. I'm just going to say that in my out loud voice. But how creepy, right? I think we really avoided a disaster with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz becoming our president. Because dang, that is awfully scary when a man gets a plaque from a freaking Satanist. Anyhow, short but sweet broadcast today. As a reminder, please get on over to restrictedrepublic.com. I talk in a lot more detail. I'm putting out an exclusive report there that you're not going to want to miss. Keep in mind, things are, even though they're free on YouTube, it's not necessarily free because they control the information that is out there. Here, we can really share that stuff on restrictedrepublic.com, and we really get down to the nitty gritty. We even do live streams from time to time, and there are no commercials on Restricted Republic. So get there, use the coupon code Lisa and the number 5 to get it for $5 per month. Anyhow, I love you all. I'm Lisa Haven, signing out.